In the quiet town of Montana, Ethan Cole's life was a picture of struggle wrapped in quiet determination. At just 23, he had the weary eyes of a man twice his age. By day, he attended his college lectures, always sitting in the back row, unnoticed. By night, he scrubbed tables and poured coffee in a small-town diner, counting every dollar toward tuition. His friends often asked why he didn't just quit, but Ethan believed in hard work and dignity, even if the world didn't believe in him. He had no parents to support him, no inheritance, and no shortcuts. Life had given him very little, but it couldn't take away his will. One rainy evening, the bell above the diner door jingled, and in walked a woman who would change everything. Eleanor Brooks, 71, elegant and graceful, carried herself with the confidence of old money. She was a millionaire widow, known in town for her vast estate and her late husband's legacy. But what people didn't know was that loneliness had become her closest companion. She sat at Ethan's table that night ordering tea and pie, her eyes filled with quiet curiosity as she watched the young man who treated every customer with kindness, no matter how tired he looked. That night marked the beginning of something neither of them expected. Days turned into weeks, and Eleanor began visiting the diner regularly. Their conversations deepened beyond small talk. She spoke of art, literature, and the loneliness of her empty mansion. Ethan spoke of dreams he couldn't afford to chase. In each other they found comfort, a connection that defied the world's expectations. Then one afternoon she made a shocking proposal. She asked Ethan to marry her. The entire town erupted in gossip and laughter. People called him a gold digger, a fool playing a game. But Ethan didn't see wealth when he looked at her. He saw warmth, kindness, and someone who believed in him for the first time in his life. The wedding was small and quiet, with more whispers than applause. Yet Ethan stood tall beside Eleanor, promising to care for her with honesty and respect. True to his word, he never touched her money. He stayed by her side, cooking her meals, reading her favorite books aloud, and listening to her stories of the past. There was no romance of youth in their relationship, but there was tenderness, a rare kind of loyalty that made even the cruelest rumors fade. For the first time, Ethan's life felt stable, almost peaceful, but peace has a way of ending sooner than we expect. Months later, Eleanor's health began to fail. The doctors said her heart was too weak, and there wasn't much time left. Ethan refused to leave her side. He spent every night holding her hand, making her laugh, reminding her that she wasn't alone. One cold evening, as the fire crackled in the mansion's living room, Eleanor looked into his eyes and whispered her final wish. She told him there was something she had never told anyone, a secret tied to her late husband and the child they had lost many years ago in Arizona. She begged Ethan to go there after she was gone, to find what was left behind and bring peace to her restless soul. When she passed away, the mansion fell silent. Ethan buried her beneath the old willow tree she loved, her final resting place overlooking the hills. The townspeople whispered again, this time in confusion. Ethan hadn't taken a penny. He sold none of her property, bought no new car, lived no different than before. Instead, he packed a small bag, filled the old pickup truck with gas, and set off toward the Arizona desert, chasing a dying woman's final wish. As the mountains faded in his rearview mirror, Ethan couldn't help but wonder what secret had been buried in that vast land, and why Eleanor had trusted him, of all people, to uncover it. Days later, he crossed into the dry, endless stretch of Arizona. The sun burned the earth and the road seemed to go on forever. But Ethan pressed on, following the coordinates Eleanor had left in a letter. Little did he know, what waited for him beyond those dusty miles would change his life forever. Not in wealth or fame, but in meaning. For in honoring a promise made in love and faith, he was about to discover a truth that would make him question everything he thought he knew about fate, family, and forgiveness. Fulfilling Eleanor's last wish, Ethan drove through endless stretches of desert highway, his old truck rattling beneath the Arizona sun. The journey felt heavier than the miles he crossed. It carried the weight of a promise, a whisper from a dying woman who had shown him love when the world offered none. The air grew hotter with every mile, the landscape turning from green to gold to dust. He didn't know what he was looking for, only that Eleanor's letter had marked this place on a worn map, along with one line that haunted him: "What we lost here must be found again." After hours of searching, Ethan's eyes caught something near an abandoned barn. a small, frail figure lying in the dirt. At first, he thought it was a mirage born from exhaustion, but as he got closer, his heart clenched. It was a boy no older than 9, his skin burnt by the sun, lips cracked, eyes half open. The child was barely breathing. Ethan dropped to his knees, his hands trembling as he poured water from his bottle onto the boy's lips. The child flinched but drank greedily, every sip a fight for life. Ethan wrapped him in his jacket and carried him back to his truck, whispering, "You're safe now, kid. I've got you." That night they stayed in an old cabin Ethan had rented nearby. He cooked soup from a can, fed the child slowly, and waited until he finally fell asleep. The boy had said nothing, only looked at Ethan with wary, hollow eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen too much hunger, too much loss. Ethan didn't ask questions. He just sat beside him, listening to the desert wind howling through the broken windows. For the first time since Eleanor's passing, Ethan felt something stir in him again, purpose, maybe even hope. He thought about how she had believed in him, how she had trusted him to find this place. Somehow deep down he knew this boy was the reason. Over the next few days, Ethan nursed the boy back to health. He learned that his name was Tama, and he spoke softly in broken English mixed with Apache words Ethan couldn't understand. He didn't talk about his family, only that he had been left behind. Each morning Ethan cooked breakfast while Tama watched him curiously, slowly growing stronger. They didn't need many words. Their silence was its own kind of bond. Ethan saw himself in the boy, lost, abandoned, but still fighting to survive. He remembered the loneliness of his own childhood and knew he couldn't leave Tama alone again. On the 4th day, as the sun began to set, there was a knock at the cabin door. Ethan opened it to find 3 Apache women standing outside, their faces lined with exhaustion and grief. They were dressed in traditional attire, their presence powerful yet gentle. One of them stepped forward, her voice trembling as she spoke. "You've found our blood." Behind her, the other women began to cry quietly, their eyes locked on Tama. The boy froze for a moment before running into their arms, sobbing. Ethan stood there speechless, realizing what had just happened. The child wasn't lost by accident. He had been taken by fate, waiting for someone to bring him home. The eldest woman turned to Ethan and said, "He is the last of our line. We searched for him for days. The spirits must have sent you." Ethan didn't know what to say. He only nodded, feeling a deep warmth spread through his chest. As they spoke, one of the women handed him a small old locket. It bore the initials EB. Inside was a faded picture of a young girl and an Apache man. Ethan's heart skipped. Eleanor Brooks, the same initials. It was then he understood everything. Eleanor's final wish wasn't about money or redemption. It was about reconnecting a broken lineage, about finding the family that her late husband had once lost. Tears filled Ethan's eyes as he watched Tama leave with the women, finally safe and surrounded by love. He realized he had fulfilled Eleanor's last wish, not by inheriting her fortune, but by restoring her peace. That night, Ethan sat outside beneath the starlit Arizona sky, holding the locket close. He whispered a quiet thank you, not just to Eleanor, but to the universe for guiding him to something greater than himself. The desert wind carried her voice back to him, soft and eternal. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt like he belonged to something bigger than his own struggles. The healing of a promise, the rebirth of a family, and the quiet mercy of fate.